everybody, I'm Joey.
And I'm Camilla.
And we are doing another Pick Six. It's been a while. We've not done
Well,
one
for
a
one
while.
of us, it's been a while.
I haven't done one for like ever.
You've been playing with other friends.
But now you're back home. And we're talking
For a visit. It's like Christmas. You gotta go see your family.
Oh, you were being nice at the beginning of the Christmas thing, then it kind of fell off. But we're talking about Pandemic. And Pandemic really just kind of changed the game in co-op stuff, right?
I think it really changed the hobby in general. I think we can go bigger than that. It changed the hobby. I have lots of friends who have discovered the hobby through Pandemic, or they just play Pandemic. They're not even in the what we call the hobby game, which is, deep diving and following different publishers and that kind of stuff. It's just, hey, we like board games. And by that, I mean Pandemic.
Right. Which, it is one of those games that people say, oh, you like games, what is it? They say Scrabble, you're like, oh, okay. But they say Pandemic, you're like, okay, you're there.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool, I don't use the word gateway game, but you know what I mean.
It's very gateway, very welcoming. It's a very approachable game. And because of that, I think it's gotten a lot of traction.
Right.
And it also opened up kind of these hobby games being accessible in Target, in Barnes & Noble's, kind of that as well. It opened a lot of doors, I think, into the hobby and what modern board gaming is.
Right. So in our Pick Six, we're going to take 6 games that you may like if you like Pandemic.
Yes. If you like Pandemic, figure out why. Whichever reason that is, here's a game kind of like that might present something a little different.
Yeah. So let's get started. Okay, so the first game, I'll go ahead and go first. Now, the first one I like as well as Pandemic, it is Horrified. And I think it actually clicks on several levels. Number one, it's co-op, because co-op, really, you're working together, and Horrified is sort of a pick up and deliver, I guess, in a very, very unique theme.
Yes.
And theme for me is one that Pandemic has a great theme. It really immerses you in the game. And I think this can as well.
Right.
And it's kind of the next level. I don't think as far as complexity, I think complexity, they're probably equal. You agree?
I think they're equal in complexity. Where Horrified does step it up a notch is with the puzzles, because you're going to be fighting 3 to 6 different monsters depending on the difficulty level.
6? You're an animal. Okay, go ahead.
I didn't say I won. I just said I did it. I didn't do it well. So you can fight the number of monsters, but they each have different win conditions that you have to, as you said, pick something up and deliver to them or solve some sort of puzzle for them. So that's where it doesn't take up the complexity. It's not any harder to get into, but there's a little bit more going on in the game as you're balancing their different needs.
I agree. And one of the benefits, like you hit on, is complexity. Pandemic is hard. It is.
You mean difficulty, not complexity.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Difficulty. It's hard, but this one scales a bit more, Horrified. So you can make it winnable by playing less monsters.
Yes.
So I do like that, because Pandemic, you'll lose a lot, and that can be frustrating, or it can be motivating. So this with Horrified, I think it's good. I think it checks those boxes. The theme is great.
And it's very approachable as well, because you can hone in on that theme you like. Do you like the American monsters?
Right.
Do you like the cryptids? Do you like the Greek monsters?
Right.
It has a lot of versatility in it in your personal
does.
interest.
Yeah. So that is Horrified.
All right, next up, let's talk Atlantis Rising, specifically the second edition. So if you are looking for this game, get the second edition. But I believe that's the only one that's generally findable.
Available.
Yeah,
available.
Findable. Findably available right now. So the second edition. And I think for me, this gave me Pandemic feels, because again, it is going to be kind of pick up and deliver, but in this one, you are collecting resources in order to pay for parts to ultimately survive. You're wanting in Pandemic, you're wanting to meet the end goal of curing all the different diseases. In this one, you want to build enough parts to escape from Atlantis. And it has that same feel where you are collecting something. This is physical components in this case, in order to get yourself off the island here of Atlantis.
Yes.
I think what this does is it brings a great tension. It has that same tension that Pandemic does of when you're turning over. Right. Oh, where are we spreading to now? That tension is really well replicated in Atlantis Rising, as the island itself is flooding. So those resources become more and more scarce and harder to get. And so there's a great tension behind it. If that's what you're liking, if you're liking that kind of collection of resources, and Pandemic is cards, but if you're liking that resource set collection in order to ultimately try and meet a goal and cure something, but really like the tension of it, I think Atlantis Rising really scratches that itch as well.
I agree. It has that clock too.
It does.
You feel like you're getting closer to the end, one way or the other.
Right, you see it. You're like there it is. We have this many turns left because we're going to flood this many different spaces. Then you also like Pandemic where you have the different player powers.
Yep.
You have that in here as well where you're playing individual characters and they have special abilities. Maybe one of them is a diver, for example, and can go to those flooded depths to get the resources and such. So it has that asymmetry a little bit as well.
Yep, that's a good one too. Atlantis Rising.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is one of the newest ones on the list. Actually, that's not true. It's a newer one.
It is. No, it is one of the newest ones.
Is it?
It is one of the newest ones.
Huh.
Yep.
Okay, it is one of the newest ones. But this is Art Project. Art Project is one that, honestly, the theme might not have you gravitate to. It's pretty much you're recovering masterpieces, right, that were stolen by like the White Hand organization or something.
Right, yeah. So you're trying to steal back art pieces and different artifacts from thieves who have stolen. You're trying to secure them before they get them.
Exactly. Yeah. And this one uses like the location management and kind of containment that Pandemic has, where you don't want to kind of have an outbreak, what they call in Pandemic.
Right. In Pandemic, you outbreak and it starts spreading out and your tracker goes up. In this one, you lose that location. Meaning you can no longer recover anything from there. It also means you can't go through it. So it might be cutting the board in half and really feeling a lot of tension in that. So you're having to manage, like you said, the locations to keep them under control.
Right, and the components on this are really nice too. I like the components. I like the look. I like the art style. One thing I will say, similar to Pandemic, this game is very hard. I think I've only won once or twice. I may not be very good at it, but the difficulty is very...
You wasn't invited back again.
Yes, that's true. But this is a very unique one that a lot of people have not played. I think should have gotten more traction.
I think so. I think if you really enjoy kind of the set collection of Pandemic as well, where you're trying to, in Pandemic, get the colors together of the different viruses, in Art Project, you're trying to get the symbols, the matching symbols, so that you can recover an object there. So if you like that as well, kind of that feeling of like, oh, I hope I get that card. If you like that tension from that part of the game, this has it as well.
Yep, I agree. And that is Art Project.
All right, next up is trekking through the national parks. Now, this is the only competitive game on the list, but it does still have the same feelings of Pandemic, specifically in the point-to-point movement and the hand management.
Right.
So what do I mean by that? Point-to-point movement. I'm here, I need to go over there, I go 1, 2, 3 spaces to get there. In this one, similar to Pandemic, you are collecting the different resources in the hand management, and you're having to manage the hand in order to claim goal cards, or in this one, park cards, I believe they're called. To visit those parks. And the game, whoever collects the most parks and points is the winner. But if you like Pandemic and sometimes you thought, I wish that this was a little bit more of a competition with the efficiency.
Right.
We're all going for the same thing, but who can do it better? I think trekking through the national parks will scratch that itch.
I agree, because getting them to move from a cooperative to back to a lighter competitive game with a honestly approachable theme.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, which is really good.
Almost everyone's been to a national park at some point.
Yes.
And again, if the mechanisms are comfortable, this is a good sidestep to that. Same, very, very similar complexity and very comfortable mechanisms. We've all moved point to point. You understand that set collection. You understand that hand management.
Yep.
And paying resources to get something. Check out Trekking Through the National Parks.
Okay, my next one is one that honestly seems like a stretch, but for me, this is one that if people like Pandemic, I do bring them into, and that is Zombicide. And I think because the cooperative nature of Zombicide is great. It's the next level of co-op where you really are, because in Pandemic, you're like, you know what, I need you to go here. I need you to do this. We need to move this from this. Same with Zombicide. You are really kind of going back and forth, saying, I need you here, here. Now, we have house rules something in Zombicide to where you can only talk to people in your room.
What?
Which is like, because otherwise you have the alpha gamer, and we only do that with alpha gamers, right? So you have to be in the same room to be able to communicate that much. But it's really fun. It also introduces a campaign element, too, sometimes.
Yes, sometimes, yeah.
Which I think is really good because you get to level up and you get to continue that on. And then not only that is, Zombicide has so many different genres. You know, you've got the classic, you've got the Western, you've got space, you've got Marvel. So
you have the white, the new
White Death,
like ancient Japan.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's a lot. It's really fun. It also looks great on the table, and it's just a fun. I believe it's also a very simple rule set. You're only limited things on what you can do each turn.
Yeah.
You just can move forward, and also the difficulty is scalable on those. So I think it's a really good one to jump into.
I think that's a good one too, because in Pandemic, going from Pandemic to Zombicide, one of my favorite things was when I realized everybody goes, and then the bad guys go. Pandemic is I go, bad guys go. You go,
right.
Bad guy. And it's not the bad guys. I know it's the diseases, and they break out. But that's the feel and the flow. I think when you move to Zombicide, you realize, wait, we all get to take a turn. We're all planning together, and then they take their turn. It just kind of ups that level of cooperation needed, which is going to up the level of communication around the table and just the general involvement and investment in the game. And that's always exciting.
And that's a good point, because like planning is so much better when you can plan your entire move and then they go, because in Pandemic, your plan can be ruined by a bad draw.
And you're hoping like, oh, I hope that card doesn't come up. This is like, well, if I go first, then I can do this, which means you can do that, and then you can react, which means they don't even get to do this thing over here.
Yeah.
And you really get to see that sequence and that cooperation. You feel like a team in it.
I agree.
More so.
I agree.
So, yeah.
All right, so that is Zombicide. Really, any of them, as long as they're dead.
And the last recommendation here for the game like Pandemic is going to be Daybreak. This is by the same designer as Pandemic, actually, Matt Leacock. So when you play Daybreak, you're going to feel a lot of the mechanisms and kind of the his design strand.
Right.
Like kind of it feels like a Matt Leacock game, but I think it takes it up a step. Similar to how we talked about Zombicide, how it steps it up just a little bit. I definitely feel like Daybreak is a step up. Specifically, what it's going to do that I think is unique is really have you start focusing on your player board that you're building up. Because you're playing as different parts of the country. You have the United States, Europe, America, and the rest of the world. And you're trying to get down the carbon emissions. So it's still kind of in that science field as well as Pandemic. And you're going to be playing off each other's abilities and strengths to ultimately cut down on the carbon emissions and trying to get that under control. So it feels like a control game, like Pandemic, but you're focused on your individual player board as you have 5 different columns that you're building up the strength of your abilities. So kind of like Zombicide, where you're talking about, you really start investing in the country that you're playing as and really trying to maximize what you can do and you can bring to this team together. Like Pandemic, it requires a very high level of cooperation. You will play your first game and probably lose because you get so focused on what you're doing. But then that second game is such a great moment where when you're playing and everyone's like, wait, there is more player interaction than I thought. We can cooperate together. It's not just if we each do the best we can, it still probably won't work.
Yeah.
But if you work together and maybe don't maximize yourself, but maximize yourself in a way to boon or to boost somebody else, then that is where you can really see yourself be successful. So again, there's a lot of, as you're playing it, it's going to feel like Pandemic, where you guys do everything you can and you take your turns and play out your hand, and then the bad guys go and they're going to or the bad events happen. With the outbreaks in Pandemic, this is world events that happen. And so you see that kind of design strand there that comes through in the game as well. But ultimately, it's a step up. It's a little bit more complicated to learn, but well worth the investment of time. So that is my last recommendation here is Daybreak.
Okay, so those are 6 games that are similar to Pandemic. Now, there's a lot that we left out of that, obviously. Number one, the Forbidden series.
Yes.
Those have a lot of DNA with Pandemic, but it's almost a step in a simpler direction.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at Pandemic, but you want to play something more with your kids or with your family, and by the Forbidden series, I mean Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, not Forbidden Sky, because it's really terrible, but the first 2.
Yeah. So, and also, we did not mention any of the Pandemics.
Yes, so Pandemic itself has a bunch of offshoots, right?
Right.
And all of them, what I love about them is they feel unique.
Right.
You know, if you like Pandemic and you like that system, but you also played War of the Warcraft growing up, you know, check out that one. That is a fantastic implementation, and it feels so very unique because you're going on quests rather than trying to cure diseases, and it feels unique. If you like Star Wars, there's the Clone Wars, and that feels so very different as you have the different factions coming out and that kind of stuff. One of the favorites here around the office is Iberia, where it's actually set back in time, and there's like train tracks that you have to go around and take ships to get to different locations. So movement is different. They're all going to feel like a Pandemic game. Absolutely. They are Pandemic games.
And Legacy.
But they feel so unique. The Legacy, if you have a dedicated group that plays Pandemic regularly, definitely check out the Legacy ones because that makes it such an experience. I mean, there are some of my top moments in board gaming ever have come from Pandemic Legacy, where game stops for 10 minutes and we all are just, you know, taking our mouths off the floor. So like, what just happened? You know, it's so very unique of an experience. It takes something you love and makes it a lifelong memory.
I agree. Yeah, so those are games like Pandemic. If you have more, go ahead and comment those below and let people know what you like if you like Pandemic. Or if you think people should play rather than Pandemic.
Yes, what else?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's Flashpoint Fire Rescue, you know, King of Monster Island. Just we had, when we were making this list, we probably had 15 we had to whittle down to from.
We had to cut them down.
And really hone in on. So definitely let us know in the comments down below what you have enjoyed, if you also enjoy Pandemic, or what's hitting with your group.
Exactly. All right, thanks for tuning in. I'm Joey.
I'm Camilla.
And go out there and, I guess, play games.
Cure the world of diseases and horrific monsters and save the art.
And cubes.
Hey folks, thanks for watching another one of our videos. If you like our videos, if you like our channel, you would love to game with us at one of our conventions. Check out Dice Tower Cruise, Dice Tower East, and Dice Tower West. Fantastic conventions where we play games with wonderful people, a humongous library, and lots of other events and stuff. Also, don't forget to check out our channel, like and subscribe. I'm Tom Bassel.